For the second time this month, 17th place QueensParkRangers face 12th place Norwich City on Sunday afternoon, this time at Carrow Road. So in this preview, I caught up with Chief Norwich City Reporter for the Pink 'Un, Connor Southwell, to find out how the Canaries have fared in the 4 games since our meeting at Loftus Road. As ever, I'll be saying a few words on Rangers at the end, so make sure to stick around for that, and please do hit like, subscribe, follow, and leave a rating on the platform of your choice if you enjoy this match preview. Hi Connor, how are you?
I'm very well. How are you, my friend?
Yes, very good, thank you.
Good.
Obviously, we're here today to chat about Norwich City versus Queens Park Rangers for the second time this month. Obviously, a very interesting fixture at the start of December. Norwich have played 4 games since our previous meeting, drawing with Pompey, 2 losses to Burnley and Sunderland, and then you won against Millwall on Boxing Day. So, talk me through what's been going on since we last met.
Yeah, it's Norwich haven't been in the best run of form, to be honest. I think the Mill game ended a run of, I think it was 2 league wins in 13. But actually, it's been a little bit odd because even though they've been on that run of form, they've been playing quite well for a lot of it. And even in those defeats to Burnley and Sunderland in the first half of both, they were leading at half time, but the overall performance was really good. They outplayed Burnley, kept them at arm's length for 45 minutes with a lot of what they wanted to do on the ball, and then it was probably a real switch off for Zian Fleming to score from range from a free kick. And then the second one was a little bit of a mess, to be honest, that cost them that game. And then at Sunderland, very similar. Sunderland didn't produce a shot on target in the first half, but in the second half, they came back into the game, scored 2 minutes after the break. Norwich have a man sent off, and it changes the game completely. So there has been a little bit of inconsistency of performance, and there's a few sort of depth issues at Norwich City, but it hasn't really felt like that bad a run. Actually, probably the worst performance in it was at Loftus Road against you guys, where they didn't turn up. They were outplayed and outfought, and just got absolutely nowhere near the levels that we know they can. They then went to Portsmouth after that and went for a very different approach. Basically, opted to go a bit longer, played Ashley Barnes up front by himself, and hoped that would build some sort of foundation to go and play, because their away form hasn't been very good throughout the whole of 2024, to be honest. So, yeah, it's been a funny season. But hopefully, I think they're hoping, obviously, with the opportunity that they've got over this festive period, which started against Millwall on Boxing Day with a victory, 2 home games, 2 games close together. If you can win both of them, you can get some real momentum to sort of turn things around a little bit. And I think that's the hope and the aim heading into, obviously, Sunday's game.
We spoke just before filming about the sort of fallout after QPR versus Norwich. So talk me through that a little bit. Obviously, I think it's Angus Gunn got a fine and there was a suspension as well.
Correct. Yeah. So I think it was, yeah, very odd, and maybe you guys have seen similar things happen before, but certainly it's been a new one. And to me, I've learned a lot more about FA processes on the back of that game than necessarily I wanted to. Yeah. Well, the first one was actually between the QPR and Portsmouth away game. So on the Monday, I think it was, so the day before Norwich travelled to Fratton Park, they learnt that Kenny McLean had been given a 3 game ban plus an extra game because he's been sent off earlier in the season. So a 4 game ban for violent conduct, which was an incident where he sort of threw his arm back into the face of your sort of, is it Morgan, your young
Yeah, Kieran
midfielder?
Morgan.
Kieran Morgan, and that had been sort of noticed retrospectively, and some of the clips didn't really look that clear, if I'm honest, in terms of where exactly he caught him or his intent and that sort of thing. So I think there was maybe less angst, certainly I'm talking about internally. Externally, there was a lot of angst about the decision, but internally, the angst was more about the process, because they learnt on the Monday. They then submitted an appeal, which was put in at 2 a.m. on the Tuesday of that game where Norwich, or that day, where Norwich City were travelling to Portsmouth, and it wasn't until 2 p.m. that afternoon, bearing in mind they were kicking off at 7:45, that they learnt that Kenny McLean wouldn't be available. I think it was probably closer to 3 o'clock. So that was the real angst around that one. And obviously, it's slightly ironic that his first game back from this ban is going to be against you guys as well. And then about, yeah, 10 days later from that game, another charge gets put in, and this is surrounding Angus Gunn, who, as he walked off the pitch at Loftus Road for half time, the fourth officials board that they hold up when they're making subs, he's kicked that out of frustration. That's been spotted on camera. It's obviously been reported. He then retrospectively faced some action as well. And I think there was a fear that he was going to miss the Boxing Day game against Millwall, but thankfully, I think common sense prevailed, and he was fined and, I don't know, made to pay for a new board and allowed to crack on. So yeah, I think there is maybe a feeling of injustice, but it's slightly odd because Is that against QPR? Is it against the FA? I'm not sure. Who knows sort of what role QPR did or didn't play in it. I suspect probably not a significant role at all because it had no impact on the game. You guys won comprehensively and deserved to win comprehensively. I think there was clearly a couple of decisions that went against Norwich on the day. There was a clear handball in the box that wasn't given. So I think all of that probably added up to a real frustration, albeit on the day where Norwich City were nowhere near it and deserved to lose the game. So yeah, it's been kind of like it's felt like the game from hell really because they lost it 3-0 and it's kind of gone on for 2 weeks and they've been dealing with suspensions and sort of disciplinary issues around it, which felt quite odd to have one game sort of looked at in that much detail. I'm not sure again how many sort of incidents we've seen in the championship this season, like the Kenny McLean ban, which feels like it could happen relatively regularly. So yeah, I think there's probably frustration more at the FA than at QPR, but it's sort of only just cleared really the sort of effects of that game when Angus Gunn was cleared to play on Boxing Day earlier this week. So yeah, it's been a funny sort of 4 weeks or so with the fallout of that game.
Now, you mentioned some problems with depth in the Norwich squad.
Mm.
So, do you expect Norwich to be active in the January transfer window?
Yeah, I think they will be, and they've sort of already started planning. There's sort of interest in a Slavia Prague winger at this moment in time, albeit there's a few in there. I think it'll probably be less of a sort of 5, 6, 7 type window, maybe the type of one that QPR had a few years ago in the Premier League, and more sort of one just to add a few bodies in it. And it's two issues really. There is a lack of depth and probably a quality point within that, but I also think in terms of the way they want to play, they don't really have enough profile of player to do it, and that means what we've seen, as we have seen in recent weeks, they basically played the same first half 3 games in a row, which has been really, really good against Millwall, against Sunderland, against Burnley, where they've limited opposition to either zero shots or very, very few shots. And in the second half, it's all unravelled when they've had to make changes because they drop players into the system that maybe aren't as technically proficient, aren't as capable of taking the ball. And that means those spells of possession that they have worked so hard on, those structures that they've worked so hard on to create really diminish. And that allows the opposition to grow back into the game. So I think they probably need a few more in the sort of profile and image of what Torup wants to do. So that I think will be the long-term aim, but obviously with a view to not just sort of short-term hole filling. I think it will be a view to season 2 of what this looks like under Johannes Torup in season 3. So that's the challenge. I think we'd be looking probably at a right winger, defensive midfielder, possibly a goalkeeper as well, because Angus Gunn's out of contract in the summer. So those 3 positions I can see being the priority. Obviously, pre anybody leaving, which is always the caveat when you approach windows, and then it's about being ready to react to anyone if anyone does go.
So, how can we expect Norwich to shape up tomorrow? You mentioned they tried a few different things, going long ball at Portsmouth. Has it changed much since the fixture at Loftus Road?
No, I think the Portsmouth game was a one-off, and it was on the back of basically that QPR defeat where they felt we need to make sure we get something at Portsmouth after losing in the manner they did at Loftus Road, which was, barring a really bad defeat to Oxford on the opening day, as bad as it's been this season performance-wise, really from a Norwich perspective. They're quite not predictable, that's the wrong term, but you know how they're going to set up. They like to play a 4-3-3. They like to have the ball. Is a few sort of interesting selection things heading into this game. Jose Cordoba, who has been playing as a left-sided centre back, was suspended for the game against Millwall, which meant Callum Doyle, who has been playing as a left back, was moved to centre back. So again, it's about whether Cordoba comes straight back in and Doyle pushes out wide. But Doyle did well, and the team did well generally. So it'd be interesting to see whether Torup sort of settles upon the same back four. Obviously, Kenny McLean returning alters the midfield dynamic significantly. So they're probably boosted by the return of a couple of really key players. Kenny McLean, I think the Boxing Day game was the first one in 13 that they've won without him in the side, which spans a couple of seasons, which is pretty mad. That's how integral he is. So it will be a very similar possession heavy 4-3-3 fluid style that Norwich City play, and try and create sort of a 2-3 structure with inverting fullbacks in sort of deep phases of the game. And then it comes down to how well oppositions compress them. And at Carrow Road, they've been a lot better at achieving what they want to achieve with the ball than they have been away from home, and that's been the major dilemma. So I think maybe QPR fans who saw that game at Loftus Road can expect to see potentially a slightly different Norwich City side to the one they saw on that day in early December. I certainly hope that's the case anyway.
Right, well, Connor, thank you for joining me for this preview. Let's round off with a score prediction.
Yeah, I think where Norwich are at the moment, it feels like this is a really big game for them to get some momentum, to try and achieve some consistency. So I'm going to go Norwich to edge it. And obviously, you guys have had a lot of travel as well. I think going to Swansea to Norwich, having done that journey, is not easy. So to do it in a couple of days will, I think, have an effect. So, and I think you guys have got some injuries as well, by all accounts. So I'm going to edge a Norwich win, 2-1 for me.
Great. Well, thank you again for joining me today, Connor, and all the best for the rest of the season.
Thank you very much, and a happy New Year to you.
You too. Thank you so much to Connor once again for joining me for this preview. Make sure you go and give him a follow on Twitter via the link in the description below. So, very much a tough one for this. Norwich City will be out for revenge, as Connor has already said, particularly with our 3-0 win completely disrupting their form after they just scored 10 goals in 2 home games just before coming to Loftus Road. A draw at Portsmouth and back-to-back losses to Sunderland and Burnley followed until that win over Millwall on Boxing Day, so they'll be eyeing this one up as an opportunity to get their form back on track. Carrow Road is, after all, where Norwich seem to flourish best as a team. 4 times this season they've scored 4 or more goals against Watford, Hull, Plymouth and Luton. And that's not exactly ideal for QPR, considering we've just conceded the same amount of goals in one match as we had in our previous 7 combined. It creates an interesting dilemma because Cifuentes has been setting us up negatively away from home over the past few games, particularly Bristol City and Swansea. And if we set up like that again with the players that we currently have available, it feels like this one could be another battering away from home. That low block just invites pressure. We got away with it at Bristol, but we didn't at Swansea, and I just can't see us sustaining that pressure from Norwich at Carrow Road. The way we beat them at Loftus Road was by applying that pressure ourselves and forcing them into mistakes, and that's the only way that I can see us picking up any kind of points from this one. So it's going to be very interesting to see what changes Marty decides to make. This time last year he made 5 tweaks between the 2-0 loss at Millwall and the 0-0 draw at Ipswich Town, so I don't think he'll be afraid to shake things up here either. For me, I think it's time that Chair comes in for a start. I think he's ready for that now, and I think Kieran Morgan's probably going to need a rest in the midfield as well. But most crucially, there's just no way that Fox and Powell can make up the left-hand side of this defence again here. So a solution will have to be found, most probably at centre-back. Though then again, Powell did get the hook at half-time, so maybe Ashby will come back into the starting lineup. I think the most important thing is just after such a poor effort against Swansea, we just want to see a much more spirited performance. I'd much rather see us attack the game and then lose, rather than just sit back, invite pressure and inevitably lose anyway. So let's round off with a score prediction as usual. I think we'll be improved here, but I do think Norwich are going to get the result that they want from this. So I'm going to go with the same score prediction as Connor. I'm going with a 2-1 loss. Let me know your score predictions and thoughts ahead of this one in the comments below, and I'll hopefully see you again in the next one for my Norwich City match reaction. Come on, you Ars.